The movie begins inside a huge castle, which has been turned into a military prison. Colonel Winter, who runs the place, is in his office when some of his friends visit. They bring exciting news. A high-profile prisoner, a lieutenant general, will be arriving soon. Winter is thrilled because he's in charge of the prison and gets the honor of welcoming one of the most respected military figures in the United States. Word spreads quickly among the inmates, and they start buzzing with curiosity and excitement. One prisoner, Yates, a former soldier who manages bets for the others, is especially interested. The whole prison waits eagerly, and soon enough, the moment comes. Lieutenant General Eugene Irwin arrives. Irwin is facing a 10-year sentence for disobeying orders. He had sent American soldiers on a mission to Burundi despite the president's instructions not to, and 8 soldiers lost their lives as a result. Colonel Winter has a deep admiration for Irwin and even hopes to get him to sign one of his military books. As Winter gets the book ready, Irwin has a brief conversation with one of the guards. Irwin doesn't mince words and bluntly tells Winter that his collection of military artifacts is pointless. He explains that true soldiers don't collect such items because they only bring back painful memories of war. What Irwin doesn't realize is that Winter overhears him. Winter feels stung by Irwin's words, especially because he has never experienced real combat himself. Hurt and embarrassed, Winter decides not to ask for the autograph. As Irwin prepares to leave the office, a prisoner named Aguilar approaches and salutes him out of respect. But Winter steps in and scolds Aguilar, reminding him that Irwin is no longer a general, but just another prisoner. The following day, the prisoners are outside in the yard, going about their daily activities. Suddenly, an argument breaks out among a group of inmates, and the tension quickly escalates into a full-blown riot. Irwin watches the chaos unfold from a distance as alarms blare loudly. The prison guards rush in, using rubber bullets to try to regain control. Meanwhile, Colonel Winter stays in his office, observing the situation through surveillance cameras, detached from the chaos happening in his prison yard. During lunchtime, a group of prisoners approached General Irwin, venting their frustrations about how Colonel Winter and the prison guards were treating them unfairly. Some inmates had even been hurt by the rubber bullets used to break up the recent riot. The prisoners were desperate and hoped Irwin might use his connections in the government to report Winter's harsh behavior and hold him accountable. But Irwin made it clear that he only wanted to serve his time quietly and wasn't interested in getting involved in any trouble. Soon after, Aguilar, a prisoner who deeply admired Irwin, came over and gave him a crisp military salute. Aguilar couldn't hide how much he looked up to Irwin, who was well known as a war hero in the United States. The two started talking about military traditions and old stories, completely unaware that Colonel Winter was secretly watching them from a distance. Seeing how much respect Aguilar had for Irwin made Colonel Winter uneasy. Winter, who was already insecure and proud, feared that the other inmates would start admiring Irwin more than him, even though Irwin was now just another prisoner. To make an example out of Aguilar and stop others from following his lead, Winter punished him harshly. He ordered Aguilar to stand outside in the yard all day, saluting the prison office. It didn't matter to Winter that the rain poured down heavily, leaving Aguilar shivering in the cold. Feeling sorry for Aguilar, Irwin went over to him and urged him to take cover from the rain. This act of compassion, however, led to Irwin being scolded and beaten by the prison guards, following Winter's orders. Despite the punishment, Irwin confronted Winter afterward, arguing that prisoners still deserved basic rights and respect. But Winter snapped back, reminding Irwin that prisoners had to follow the rules and shouldn't interfere with the guards. Since Winter was still bitter about Irwin criticizing his war memorabilia, he decided to punish Irwin further by making him haul heavy rocks in the yard. Irwin's sentence turned into a spectacle for Yates and the other prisoners, who began placing bets on whether Irwin would finish the grueling task or collapse from exhaustion. Even though Irwin wasn't as strong as he used to be, he put all his effort into moving the heavy stones, never complaining. He even stripped off his shirt under the scorching sun, revealing battle scars that told stories of his past bravery. One scar, in particular, marked the time he had heroically defended his fellow soldiers, a moment that earned him deep respect in the history of the U.S. military. Even though Irwin's punishment was extended to an entire day, followed by hours of solitary confinement, he never gave up on completing his task. When he finally returned to the main cell area, the other inmates held deep respect for him. They admired his perseverance and thought he showed the true spirit of a warrior. One of the prisoners, Yates, visited Irwin and handed him a pack of cigarettes as a gift. But since Irwin didn't smoke, he told Aguilar to share the cigarettes with everyone. During this moment, we learned that Irwin had actually known Yates' father, who had once served under him. Irwin then shared a story about Yates' dad, recalling how he inspired hope among the soldiers when they were trapped behind enemy lines with slim chances of survival. Irwin explained that those soldiers were like family to him, and he did everything he could to bring them to safety. Hearing this, Yates, who used to be an officer and a helicopter pilot, was amazed to discover this heroic side of his father's past. The next day, Irwin noticed that some of the prisoners had been assigned by Winter to build a wall, a job meant to keep them busy and out of trouble. Irwin had a clever idea and told the inmates to think differently about the task. He suggested that they pretend they were constructing a castle wall, like something from an old medieval fortress. He then asked Aguilar, whose father had been a skilled builder, to teach the prisoners how to lay stones and use mortar to make the wall strong. With Irwin's guidance, the inmates started working together, transforming the project into something meaningful. Instead of calling him general, the prisoners began calling him chief as a sign of respect for his leadership. When Colonel Winter found out, he became worried that Irwin was building a following and felt threatened by the growing admiration the prisoners had for him. Jealous and insecure, Winter ordered the guards to tear down the wall. When the guards brought in a bulldozer to destroy the wall, Aguilar bravely stepped in front of it to protect their work. Without hesitation, Winter commanded a sniper to fire a rubber bullet at Aguilar's head. Rubber bullets are usually not lethal, but the shot killed Aguilar instantly. As the wall crumbled, Irwin and the prisoners honored Aguilar, mourning him like a fallen soldier who had died in battle. A short while later, Colonel Winter, worried that his authority was slipping, went to Irwin's cell and tried to make a deal. He wanted Irwin to keep quiet about what happened to Aguilar, but Irwin firmly refused the offer. In fact, he and the other prisoners were even considering demanding that Winter step down from his position because they believed he had abused his power with unnecessary violence. Since they knew some guards might inform Winter about their plans, the prisoners began acting like soldiers around Irwin, using secret codes and signals to communicate. When Brigadier General Wheeler, Winter's superior, visited the prison, he confronted Winter about the situation with Irwin. Winter, feeling paranoid, insisted that Wheeler was imagining things and saw the prison as a battleground where Irwin was trying to take over his job. However, Wheeler, who had a great deal of respect for Irwin, decided to meet with the general personally. Wearing his brigadier star, Wheeler listened as Irwin and the prisoners spoke about Winter's unfair actions. Wheeler advised them to gather solid evidence of Winter's misconduct so he could take proper action. Motivated by Wheeler's advice, Irwin and a close group of inmates began planning to remove Winter from his position as warden. At first, Yates seemed interested in joining their efforts, but for reasons unknown, he later backed out and distanced himself from Irwin and the group. Winter noticed Yates' hesitation and approached him, offering a reduced sentence if he agreed to spy on Irwin and report back on their plans. Tempted by the offer, Yates accepted. When the prisoners finally managed to distract the guards, Irwin called everyone together to reveal his plan to take control of the prison from Winter. As a bold and symbolic move, they decided to raise the United States flag upside down, a universal sign of distress, to show that they were no longer under Winter's authority and that he needed to be removed from his position. After Irwin shared his plan with all the inmates, he realized that Yates was acting as a spy and was likely reporting everything back to Winter. To address this, Irwin called Yates for a private conversation. During their talk, Irwin tried to guide Yates with heartfelt advice. He told Yates that he saw the strength and courage of a real warrior within him, unlike Winter, who only used Yates for selfish purposes and couldn't see his true potential. Irwin believed Yates had the spirit to defend those who were treated unfairly. But Yates brushed off Irwin's words and, without hesitation, ran to inform Winter about the plan. As soon as Winter learned the details, he hid the flag in his office to keep it out of reach. Not long after, an angry inmate burst into Winter's office, yelling at Yates and calling him a traitor. The commotion forced Winter and his men to leave and deal with the disturbance. While they were distracted, Yates seized the moment. He grabbed the hidden flag from Winter's office and found a secure place to hide it. The next day, Yates went back to Winter and lied, claiming that Irwin already had the flag. Winter believed the lie and, thinking Yates had sided with Irwin, threw him into solitary confinement as punishment. With the situation escalating, Winter ordered nearly all his guards to gather the prisoners in the yard and search Irwin's cell for the flag. But this was exactly what Irwin had planned. By drawing the guards away, he gave the inmates more freedom to act and set the stage for creating chaos throughout the prison. Irwin's goal was to show General Wheeler that Winter had lost control and was unfit to lead. Meanwhile, Yates managed to break out of solitary confinement just as riots erupted across the prison. One inmate even reached the communications room and called Wheeler to report the chaos, explaining that Winter was unable to manage the situation. Desperate, Winter sent his remaining guards to fight off Irwin and the inmates, who had improvised weapons and worked together to defend themselves. The prisoners stormed Winter's office and fended off an attack from a water cannon mounted on an armored vehicle. The situation grew more intense as Winter received word that Wheeler would arrive in 20 minutes. Panicking, Winter ordered the helicopters to open fire on the inmates. But Irwin had anticipated this move. He urged the prisoners to help Yates seize control of one of the helicopters. Working together, they managed to do just that. Yates took down the sniper responsible for Aguilar's death, marking a key victory for Irwin and his followers. As Winter's efforts to defeat Irwin and the prisoners kept failing, he decided to take control himself. He ordered all his guards to surround the inmates with guns, knowing that in emergencies, the guards were allowed to use deadly force. Winter demanded that the prisoners get down on the ground. When they refused, he warned them that snipers above would open fire if they didn't follow his command. Irwin, determined to keep his fellow inmates safe, told them to lie down, and they obeyed him without hesitation. Winter then demanded that Irwin return the flag, but Irwin refused. Instead, he turned his back on Winter and calmly walked toward the flagpole, ready to raise the flag. Winter grew more anxious and repeatedly shouted at Irwin to stop. But Irwin ignored him, and even when Winter ordered his guards to shoot, they refused. His desperation increased as no one followed his orders, not even Captain Parrots, his most trusted aide. Frustrated and desperate, Winter took matters into his own hands. He aimed his gun and shot Irwin in the back just as Irwin began raising the flag. Despite his injury and the pain, General Irwin used his last moments to keep raising the flag. He didn't stop until it was fully hoisted. Once the flag was up, Captain Parrot stepped forward and arrested Winter for shooting Irwin. The inmates, who had risen to their feet, stood together and saluted the flag flying high above them. Winter, in shock, realized the flag had been raised correctly, making his violent act senseless. The movie ends with the sight of the flag waving over the prison walls as General Wheeler arrives. Colonel Winter is placed in handcuffs and led away. In tribute to their fallen friends, the inmates build a new wall, carving the names of Aguilar and Irwin into the stones, forever honoring their bravery. So the moral of the story is, if you're running a prison and you're so insecure that you turn it into a medieval war game, don't be surprised when the peasants stage a castle-sized rebellion.